Giblet's checklist has 4 names on it: Boggy, Meech, Diz, and then at the bottom, separated from the others, written differently from the others, Rest Easy Big Guy. That is the only entry on that entire list that is not a transaction, not a debt owed or a favor uncollected, just a goodbye. 4 words, from a small creature who has clearly said too many goodbyes to have the energy for more than 4 words anymore. And when I read that entry for the first time, I felt something, and I moved on because Chapter 5 was throwing a lot at me, and I did not stop on it the way I should have. But I have been thinking about it since. Because here's the thing about that entry that changes everything once you see it. Giblet knows we killed Doey. He was there when we arrived in Chapter 5. He knows the timeline. He knows what happened to Safe Haven and how it ended, and who was holding the weapon when the chapter closed. He wrote "Rest Easy, Big Guy," and then he helped us anyway. And I do not think most people have fully reckoned with what that means, not about Giblet, but about us, about what we actually did in Chapter 4. Let me build this from the beginning, because to understand what Chapter 5 is quietly telling us about Doey's death, you have to understand what Doey actually was, not as a gameplay character, as a person, or as 3 people. Because that is the thing about Doey the Dough-Man that the community has processed emotionally without fully processing structurally. Experiment 1322 was not 1 child, he was 3. Jack Ayers, a little boy who loved Doey toys so much he won a factory tour, fell into a vat of dough, and was absorbed before his parents could reach him. Matthew Hallard, a 15-year-old orphan from Playcare, mature and careful and carrying the kind of old soul weight that teenagers get when they have been through too much, too young. And Kevin Barnes, a boy documented in Playtime Co. files as volatile, angry, difficult, the one they labels a problem child, the one whose inclusion made the whole experiment dangerous. 3 boys, 3 sets of memories, 3 lives folded into 1 clay body and set loose in a factory that immediately started using them. And here is what that body did. After the hour of joy, after the experiments killed the researchers and took the building, Doey did not scatter. He did not hide. He did not follow the prototype. He looked at the wreckage of what had been done to him and to everyone around him, and he built something. He carved out a section of the facility and he called it Safe Haven, and he filled it with every experiment that was not dangerous, every toy that was frightened, every conscious creature in the building who just wanted to be somewhere that was not actively trying to kill them. He kept the lights on, he kept the walls up, he maintained it for years. And when Poppy disappeared, when she vanished into her case and nobody knew where she was, he ran it alone. No guidance, no backup. Just Doey. 3 boys in a clay body, holding a sanctuary together in the middle of the most dangerous building on Earth for years without asking for anything in return. That is who we killed at the end of Chapter 4. That is the big guy Giblet told to rest easy. And now here's the part that I have not been able to leave alone. Here's where it gets crazy. The prototype destroyed Safe Haven. That is confirmed and documented. He moved the bombs that we planted in the foundation, relocated them, turned our own plan against everyone inside. The explosion killed most of Safe Haven's inhabitants, the toys Doey had protected for years, the friends he had gathered and sheltered and kept alive through nothing but force of will and careful management of a building that wanted them dead. And when Doey saw what had happened, when he came back and saw the bodies, the wreckage, the end of everything he had built, he snapped. Kevin took over. The rage that Matthew had been managing for years, that Jack's innocence had been softening for years, broke through completely. And Doey, in the most devastated state an experiment can exist in, turned on us, blamed us, came at us with everything he had, and we killed him. But here is the question that Chapter 5 forced me to finally ask. Why did the prototype move the bombs? He could have simply disarmed them, he could have removed them from the building. He could have disabled our plan in any number of ways that did not involve detonating them inside Safe Haven and killing everyone Doey had spent years protecting. He chose the method that caused the maximum possible grief for the maximum possible number of surviving experiments. He chose the method that would destroy the one thing in this facility that Doey had poured his entire existence into. He chose the method that would break Doey completely. And a creature as calculated as the prototype does not make that choice by accident. He made it because a broken Doey served a purpose. A grieving, Kevin-controlled, beyond reasoning Doey attacking the one ally he had left in that building, us, was not a side effect of the plan. It was the plan. Wait. The prototype needed Doey dead, but he could not kill Doey himself. Hold on, let me explain why that matters. Because across 5 chapters, the prototype has absorbed and destroyed countless experiments. He is the apex of this facility. There is almost nothing in the building that can genuinely challenge him in direct confrontation. But Doey was different. Doey was confirmed by the wiki, by the Heroes Wiki character breakdown, by the game's own framing, to be the second most dangerous experiment in the facility, behind only the prototype himself. That is not a casual designation. In a building full of things that can kill you, Doey sat in a specific tier just below the entity running everything. He had survived the Hour of Joy. He had run Safe Haven for years against active prototype opposition. He had fought off threats and maintained a fortified section of the facility that the prototype had apparently decided was not worth the cost of taking directly. They had a standoff, a balance. And the prototype, for all his capability, had apparently calculated that engaging Doey directly carried a cost he was not ready to pay. So he did not engage Doey directly, he used us. And this is the part I like to call the borrowed weapon theory. Because here is what the prototype actually did in Chapter 4 when you trace it from the beginning. He let us into the facility. He guided us as Ollie, as our trusted support, as the friendly voice in our ear, through the building and directly to Safe Haven. He let us build a relationship with Doey. He let us earn Doey's trust. He let us become, in Doey's eyes, an ally. And then he moved the bombs, and he waited, because he knew exactly what a grieving, Kevin-controlled Doey would do when he found the wreckage. He knew Doey would not look at the situation clearly. He knew the boys inside Doey, especially Kevin, would not distinguish between the entity who moved the bombs and the entity who planted them. He knew Doey would come for us, and he knew that we, cornered and with no other option, would fight back and win, because we had the tools and Doey had only his rage. The prototype handed us the weapons, manufactured the grief, and stepped back. And we did exactly what he needed us to do without ever understanding that we were doing it. And here is the most devastating part of this entire thing, the part that I genuinely had to sit with before I could write it. Doey said sorry at the end. When it was over, when his bodies were frozen and the press was coming down, some part of Doey, probably Jack, probably the boy who just wanted a normal life and got none of it, said sorry. To us. After everything. After we killed him. He apologized. And the community has been heartbroken about that moment since Chapter 4 dropped, and I completely understand why. It is one of the most gut-wrenching things this franchise has ever done. But I want to reframe what that apology actually means in light of everything I just told you. Because Doey was not apologizing for attacking us. He was not apologizing for the rage, for Kevin, for the chase, for the danger he put us in. I think he was apologizing for something much larger and much quieter than that. I think some part of Doey in those final seconds understood that he had been used, that his grief had been engineered, that the thing he blamed us for was done by something else wearing our fingerprints, that he spent his last moments of functioning consciousness fighting the wrong enemy. And the apology was not for the fight, it was for the mistake, for being exactly what the prototype needed him to be at exactly the right moment. I need a second. Because here is what Chapter 5 adds to this. Here is the piece that connects it all back. Giblet knows. Giblet's checklist was written before we arrived. The deaths of Boggy and Meech and Diz are noted with the flat affect of someone who has been keeping account for too long. And then Doey's entry, separate, different, warmer, and more devastated in 4 words than the others get in 1. Giblet mourned him. And then Giblet helped us. He looked at us, the people who were holding the weapon when Doey died, even if we did not understand whose hand was guiding ours, and he chose to work with us anyway. Because Giblet, who is small and has watched everyone around him die, understands something that most of the community has not fully articulated yet. The Prototype 1, Chapter 4, he removed his most dangerous obstacle without touching it. And the only way Chapter 6 ends differently is if the people who were used as instruments in Chapter 4 understand what was done to them before the prototype can do it again. Because here's the thing, the borrowed weapon theory does not end with Doey. The prototype has demonstrated clearly that his preferred method of eliminating threats is to use someone else to do it. He used us against Doey. He used our planted bombs to destroy Safe Haven. He used Ollie's identity for years to guide us through the facility. He is not a blunt instrument. He is the most sophisticated manipulator in this building, and he has never once needed to get his hands dirty when someone else's hands were available. And in Chapter 5, there are still characters around us that we trust. Giblet, Kissy, the Resistance Network, the plan we are operating inside of. And the question that Chapter 5 asks without ever saying it out loud, the question that Giblet's checklist asks in 4 words, is whether we have learned anything.
Rest easy, big guy. We're sorry too. We just did not know we were the weapon until it was too late. Let me know in the comments if you caught the Doey entry on the checklist and what it meant to you in the moment, because I want to know if other people stopped on those 4 words the way I eventually did. And if you want the full breakdown of every moment in Chapter 4 where the prototype's manipulation of the timeline could be traced, the specific points where all these guidance and the prototype's actions align in ways that look different once you understand who is talking to us, that is the next one. Because when you map that sequence, the degree of planning involved is genuinely shocking. It goes back further than most people think, and it changes how you have to read the letter we received in Chapter 1. Drop your theory below. And tell me, do you think Doey is really gone?